everyone. I hope you're having a great day. I am here to talk a little bit about the tabs that I use in my journals. Over the last few videos that I've done, I've had a lot of people comment on them and question how I do them. So I'm here today to tell you. So this is my latest flip-flop journal, and it is a custom order, and it will be going to its new home in a couple of days. And I wanted to use this just as an example to talk about some of the tabs that I do, but also to talk a little bit about kind of side interest. I personally do not do things that are I don't want to say similar. So I don't do, say, a tab at the top, then the next one in the middle, then the next one at the bottom. I like to vary that. So here I've started with a tab at the bottom, then the next one I put at the top, then the next one in the middle. So a variety like that. The other thing is if I'm doing something on the edge of a page, I don't typically do the same thing throughout the journal. So in this case I have, so maybe not a great example. So I've used sari ribbon, but it's all different colors. So it's all, it all creates a little bit of interest, although it may be similar. So typically what I would do is maybe a bit of sari ribbon. The next one might be a little bit of crocheted lace. The next one may be a ruffle that I've made from fabric or kind of sheer fabric, something like that. Might be pom-pom trim, depending on what style of journal I'm doing. So that's what I mean about it being slightly different, and that can create a little bit more interest in a journal. The other thing that you can do, of course, is to add clips and so on. So that's how I've done this journal. I've started with a tab. You can see here a shaped tab at the bottom. Then the next one that I have, although it has very similar decoration, you can see I've used that rosette trim. It's a different style of tab, and I've moved it to the top. And then the last one on this side is, again, one of the shaped tabs that I used right at the beginning, put in the middle. And I've just added a little bit of age tape and a little ruffle of tissue paper there, craft colored tissue paper. So that's an example of kind of my thoughts on the tabs that I like to do. So let me talk a little bit about how I make them, where I get them from. So one of the things that you can do is head over to the Graphics Fairy website. This is a free printable, and I will link this below for you. These tabs I've printed at 80%, so they are slightly larger if you print them at, of course, at 100%, but you can shrink them down even further. You could do 75% or 50%, depending on the size of journal you're making or the size of tag that you're putting this tab onto. The other thing that I use, of course, are tab punches. This is the whale tail one. I don't use that a lot, but I do have that, so that's a good one to have. And there's lots of, you can see lots of space here to do some decorating, so that's a good one to use. In fact, I may have to start using a little bit more. This is a We Are Memory Keepers tab punch, and you will see here that this is a single punch. It's not a folded punch. So let me show you how I make this into a double-sided punch. So just take a piece of paper. Okay, I've just folded it in half. Make sure I can get this in here right. And you'll see here that I've put it in and I've left it slightly lower than the top of the tab so that that fold does not get cut. So the fold is slightly lower than the top of the punch. And let me punch it. And you can see that it's still folded. Now I cut that too short. You of course would have a larger piece of paper. But there you go. There's a folded tab for the side of your page. The other thing that I use is tag punches. So this is an EK Success one. I think I've had it for a lot of years, but you could use that. And this is the shape that it punches. And so you can fold that in half. Just see if I can fold that in half, and you can have this edge on your page, so it's the fancy edge on your page, or you could cut this in half. I've done this before, so that the straight edge goes on your page and then the fancy shaped edge is sticking out, and this of course would be one that you would stick together, just like these Graphics Fairy ones. They're separate, and so you have to stick them together if you want them on both sides of the page. And that certainly is my preference, that my tabs are folded around a page. However, it's a great opportunity if you're using these, it's a great opportunity to use some of that age tape along the top of it, number one, to make sure that they stay together, but also to add a little bit more interest to your tab. The other thing that I like to do is use my die cuts or my dies. So this is how I store them, the little nesting dies. Hopefully you can see it. So I have very thick card here that I have attached magnetic backing to, and then I've just put the dies onto that. So it stores very well just on my bookshelf here. I have a number of the X-Cut nesting dies, and this is the one that you see me use a lot, this particular die. I essentially just cut a bunch out. I'm working on a few more custom flip-flop journals, so I've got a bunch of those dies cut out so that I've got them ready to go for my tabs in those journals. So I just cut out a bunch so that they're ready to go. So that's a good one to use. This is an X-Cut die. Now I've had these for a lot of years, so I don't know if they're still available, but certainly have a look at your dies and see if there's some there that you could use. This is another good one. So if you were going to fold it over, that's what the half would look like, and I think that's an interesting shape as well. Of course, you could just use, you know, any circular or rectangular dies that you have, depending on the style of journal that you're doing. I like to use this one. So again, if you folded it in half, that would be the shape you would end up with, which I think is interesting as well and gives you lots of space to do decorating on it. The other one, I just found this one actually today. I'd forgotten that I had it. I think I'll be using this more, is this one. So folding it in half, that's the shape you're going to get. So I thought that was a really great shape as well. So that's how I achieve those interesting tabs that I use on my page edges. So check out not only your punches, but check out your dies as well to see what you may have that would make some interesting tabs. So let me walk you through some samples that I've made here, and then we can work on one or two depending on what I've got going here to show you. So you can do some with some embossed paper. I've cut two from an embossed piece of paper here, and the only reason I cut two is because I didn't have a piece large enough to fold over, but I'm going to be using this in an upcoming journal because I think it's very interesting. You could put something in the center here if you wanted, or just a little bit of trim on the edge. So there's that. So these are some samples that I have here. So this is that die that I've cut out. I've added a little bit of doily here that I've just glued on the inside. You can see a little bit of cheesecloth and a little rosette trim, and then it folds in half and it gets added to your page that way. So that's the first one. And then this is one of the smaller dies that I showed you that I've cut. And I've just added, again, a little bit of cheesecloth. And this time I added a button. Now with my buttons, I always like to make sure that even if I'm not sewing them on, if I'm just gluing them on, I still put a piece of embroidery floss in the holes, because to me that just finishes it. For me, if there's no thread in those holes, it looks unfinished. So that's just me. And I like this size because you could certainly add it to a smaller tab, or if your journal was much smaller, or rather a smaller tag, or if you had a smaller journal, this would be a great size. Or maybe it's an insert within your journal. This would be a great option as well. And then with this one, I have used the Graphics Fairy cutouts. I just cut out 2 of these ones. And on the bottom, I have just added a little bit of ruffled tissue paper, craft tissue paper. You can see here that I've just glued on the reverse side. And then I've just layered over some of that rosette trim again. And so this would get glued to the front of the page. This side would get glued to the back of the page, and there you have your tab. Or this makes a great tag topper as well, just a really pretty tag topper. So let's kind of talk a little bit about some of the things that I use. Of course, you saw me use some doily, and to add this, all I've done is cut 3 of these edges, kind of scallops, and just cut them at an angle to fit underneath that. So I use that. I mentioned some cheesecloth. I have my rosette trim, and I don't always use this. This is something that I've been using over, well, I guess this year actually. So you can cut bits and pieces off it. I have it in purple as well, and I think another color. My embroidery floss, so that I can make sure that I put thread in any of holes of any buttons that I might be using. I mentioned my tab or my die shapes here. And then I've also got a little bit of kind of scrap lace or bits and pieces of sheer fabric, a little bit of sari ribbon. So these are all just things that you can use to layer on top of the tag before you put either your button or your trim. The other thing I like to use, if you have, say you're using a digital kit and there may be some flowers or leaves or whatever you might want to use, you can fussy cut those out and use those on your tab as well. So let me just show you a little bit of how I created those. So let me grab this small one here. And if I get my head in the frame, I apologize for that. It's just, if you do videos, you know that it's difficult to see what you're doing. So one of the, I use the art glitter glue, and you can see this is well loved. But that's what I use to glue things on. So I've cut one of the smaller dies here, used one of the smaller dies. And all I do is a little bit of glue. And I've just kind of layered on a couple of pieces of sheer fabric scrap that I had, like that. And then a little bit more glue. I've got a little bit of cheesecloth here. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of rosette trim. And there we go. We've got another tab to use in a project coming up. So there we go. So that's essentially, that's all I do. I can do, let me do one more here and show you. So I'll use one of these shape dies, and all I do is fold it in half, as in half as I can get it. Let me just ink the edges. Now for all of these, I have used the Tim Holtz Distress ink in tea dye, and it's the oxide, and I always do the top as well. So maybe for this one, what are we going to use here? Let's use a little bit of this. So you can see here, this is how I just cut that shape out for the bottom. And I think I'm going to have to trim that a little bit more. There we go. Let me just make sure that fits. Yeah, that fits. So let's glue that on. Sure that I've got it centered properly. So I always like to center the middle scallop with kind of this middle part of that tab. So we've got that. We've used a lot of buttons and so on. So let me just grab some of this aged tape that I've got. This is, I make this from just cellophane tape. Honestly, it's just this cheap tape, you know, the stuff that you wouldn't normally wrap a present with. Just get this at the drugstore, actually, the transparent tape, but it's the shiny, just because to me that looks older. And then I just put strips on this. It's just like a plastic sheet protector that you would use for schoolwork potentially. And then I just rub on caramel alcohol ink from Tim Holtz, and that's it. And then you just let it dry a little bit and you're left with this aged tape. So let me just grab a little piece here. There we go. And it comes, because it's on this plastic, it comes off very easily. So I'm just going to put a little bit at the top here. And if you get it crooked, all the better, because then it looks even older, in my opinion. And then I'm going to add one more little piece just along the top here. Now, I've also, you could add, you know, your trim or button or something like that here. I just don't have another button out, but you certainly could. Even to add even more interest to it. So you can see that there's all kinds of things that you can do with your tabs to make them interesting and different, to add that interest to your page edges. I hope that was helpful. I hope I've given you a few ideas of what you can do. You can use your tag punches, your tab punches, you can use tags, punches, you can use your die cuts, or you can head over and pick up this freebie from the Graphics Fairy, so that you have some different options for your tabs to add more interest to your journals. So thanks everyone. I hope this was helpful to those of you that were asking and wondering how I do my tabs. If there's anything else that you would like to ask me, how I do things or why I do things the way I do, leave a comment below and I'm happy to come back on and go through that for you. So thanks everyone. I hope I'll see you back here soon.